welcome back to my channel. Thank you for returning back and wanting to learn more information in regards to social anxiety and how social anxiety is in connection to anxiety and depression. So let's get started, peeps. First off, social anxiety. Where does that come from? For those of you who are just curious or may have an idea to why their social anxiety is really bad, or why it constantly occurs when you guys are surrounded by a big crowd or in a really uncomfortable situation, what I've noticed within a pattern within my clients and also with my own personal experience when my anxiety increased at certain points in my life, I noticed that consistent exposure to any type of abuse will increase your chances of having social anxiety. And this includes physical abuse, verbal abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, molestation, anything that caused any type of trauma that was constantly happening to you. It could be any type of abuse. And by verbal abuse, it could be just yelling at your kid because you're just used to yelling, because I yell a lot, people. People that know me know that I can yell really, really loud and lose my patience and lose my frustration. And the way I communicate is not very the healthiest way of communicating, and I lose people. If you yell at your kids that way, or if you even slightly hit them and they're just not one of those type of people that respond well to that type of fear, it's gonna backfire and they will eventually have anxiety. And as a kid, they don't know what that feeling is, so they start to cry, they start to shut down, they don't want to participate, they won't talk to you, they'll cry for hours and hours at a time. So just pay attention to that, you guys. If you're one of those people that yell all the time, is constantly screaming, and you notice that your kid is getting spazzed out all the time or worried all the time, is because you're turning on that switch, that worriedness switch. When you're yelling, they're gonna get worried that you're gonna yell at them or scream at them or hit them. So now they're worrying about other silly stuff because they got so used to being worried that they're gonna get yelled at or screamed. And sometimes, like I said, it's not intentional. Sometimes we don't realize that that's causing damage to our kids or to people. If you're exposed as a child or as a teenager, because it's either you saw it or you experienced it, more likely you will suffer with social anxiety if you're not one of those type of people that can learn how to cope with being exposed to that type of abuse. Granted, there's some people that can get exposed to physical abuse, get hit, get yelled at for many, many years, and it won't affect them the way certain other people would, because they're just more sensitive and they're not really, they just don't know how to cope with things like that, or maybe no one really taught them how. Like I mentioned, it's just old habits and just old culture ways of maybe disciplining our children or adolescents. Sometimes I think it actually hurts more than it causes help. What I've also noticed too is that a lot of disciplinary actions is geared by fear. So that's why social anxiety gets created when you're being hit all the time, or you're constantly being yelled at. You will start to have a lot of anxiety because you're scared you're gonna get yelled at again, and you're very hyper vigilant, waiting to see, are they gonna yell at me this time? Are they gonna hit me? Basically, you instilled fear in that person, and that's the approach that we've been taught for many, many, many years. And what my approach is, teaching the cause and effect of making a positive choice and making a negative choice. There's always consequences to any type of behavior, and the way we can teach ourselves and teach our kids to learn how to handle certain situations, which was either caused in the past or now, it's learning how to discipline in a different way and just learning how to guide them in a different way, so it doesn't cause them more anxiety or have a social anxiety problem, which eventually leads into depression. And I'm going to explain that, how anxiety and depression is linked. Anxiety and depression is linked in a sense of, whenever, let's say you're a really, really shy person. a naturally shy person, and it's really hard for you to make friends, right? And as you get older, no one really teaches you how to make friends or how to get over that shyness, so it causes you anxiety. You're always scared. You don't know what to say. And the older you get, the less and less friends you'll have, because it's just getting tougher and tougher. And the less friends you may have, or the less connections you make with people, it eventually causes you to feel depressed, because you start to think about all the negative effects of your anxiety, and it makes you sad that you don't have friends, or it's hard for you to communicate, or it's hard for you to say, hey, I need help now and I feel really, really sad. So anxiety and depression is always in connection, because whatever is causing your anxiety and whatever is not letting you do what you have to do in your everyday routine, whether it's just going to school or being happy, it's all in connection with depression. So basically, anxiety increases the chances of you developing depression, because whatever anxiety you're experiencing that's not letting you do everyday normal routines or your schedule, it's gonna make you feel sad. It's gonna make you feel crappy. They're like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And then you just get sucked in this little sucky hole that you can't pull yourself out of. So that's why it's extremely important that you try your hardest to pull yourself out of that hole, and start now by implementing coping skills interventions. And first off, what I'm going to talk about is resources. I did mention that on my last post, that I was going to talk about resources. One resource that I will talk about is reading. I know a lot of you don't like to read, but abnormal psychology, people. This is one of the best classes I've ever taken when I was going to school. I learned so much, and it made me understand what the heck is going on inside our brain when I read this book. Granted, you don't have to take this class, people. You could just buy this online. I bought this online used for, I think it was like $56. For whatever you're like dealing with, whether is cutting, depression, anxiety, ADHD, autism. This book, oh my gosh, it's like a Bible. It's like, it's DMH stuff, but it's broken down to people who want to just understand the symptoms. And you don't have to take the class, you guys. You could just buy the book and read it to yourself, because basically the teacher is just reading the book. I mean, I remember hearing that one of the YouTubers saying that basically that's what the teacher's doing, is reading the book and telling you what the book is saying, and that's kind of the truth. Some teachers are better than others, where they can get insight and add to the book. I really appreciate the way my teacher was able to integrate that. So that is one of those benefits if you do go to the class. But as I mentioned, you can always just buy this book, you guys. Buy it if you want to learn more, understand, so that you find the reason to what's causing you and move on. Because a lot of the times we hold on to little things, which, you know, doesn't help us to move on or become better at controlling our symptoms and behavior. So educate, learn, or watch my videos, whatever works. Now, coping skills and interventions. That's what's going to really help anyone persevere social anxiety. First, I always tell everybody, don't let your symptoms define you. Just because you have social anxiety doesn't mean you're always going to have social anxiety. You can control it, and it's manageable. You just have to put in the work, as I mentioned. Now, putting in the work. One intervention that I will always suggest is exposure. You have to expose yourself to uncomfortable situations that will increase your anxiety. That's an intervention. Slowly exposing yourself. Baby steps. Start with smaller crowds. Go to the library first at a quiet setting. Gradually move to a bigger setting with a bigger crowd. Practice your coping skills while you do the interventions. And coping skills could be having a stress ball with you, listening to music on one earbud to help you calm down, learning how to take deep breaths privately in case you're getting, you know, embarrassed or shy because you're scared that people are going to stare at you. Going to the bathroom, putting water in your face so you could calm down, talking to yourself, pacing back and forth, reminding yourself that everything's going to be okay. Those are the coping skills that you need to use while you do your interventions, which is exposing yourself. You have to gradually do it. Baby steps, you guys. Have a coach with you. That's why I say that behavioral specialist is really beneficial for sometimes younger kids, because if you nip it in the bud at a younger age, it'll be a lot easier as you get older. But as you get older, it gets harder and harder. But you can do it, you guys. Just because you've been having social anxiety for 30 years, you can control your anxiety. It just takes some time, and it takes a lot of practice and consistency. You have to constantly put yourself in comfortable situations, and having that person there to support you, to remind you on the harder times, and slowly they can taper away, because you cannot depend on that person. Remember that, because you're going to create another coping skill that's not healthy for you, because that person's not always going to be available. You got to remember that. Whoever you decide that's going to help you through this process, you got to remember they're not always going to be there with you forever. You need to learn to cope on your own. So that's why I say taper away certain coping skills, because it'll help you in the long run. And then eventually you'll be able to control your anxiety. There's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days. But as long as I said, if you practice, you put in the work, you can do it. Constant exposure. Baby steps. Okay, peeps? A very unhealthy coping skill that I know I'm very familiar with is cutting. So cutting is just another form of coping skill. It's just not a healthy coping skill. It falls in the same type of category as if I feel crappy or I feel stressed or sad, I'm gonna go drink. That's not a healthy coping skill. I feel shitty, I feel crappy, I'm gonna go smoke some weed. That's not a good coping skill. I feel like crap, no one loves me, I'm gonna go cut myself. That's not a very good coping skill. That's why I keep mentioning that those are just unhealthy coping skills. Those are unhealthy habits. And with practice and with a different mindset, it will help you not revert back to doing those bad coping skills, or just learning how to de-stress in a more healthier way, and learning where that stress is coming from. Because if I mentioned to you, like in my other videos, if something is causing you stress right now and you need to figure out a way how to tame that stress down, if it's removing yourself from that situation or learning how to cut people off, those are the steps that you have to take. And there are very hard steps, but you can do it with persistency, like I mentioned, and just having faith in yourself, that you have to always put yourself first sometimes in order for you to be happy. And sometimes it's really hard for people to do that, especially if you love to give. That will suck you dry, and you will start to feel depressed, and then the whole anxiety and the spill and stuff like that. So, and lastly, I wanted to explain how if you don't control your anxiety or your social anxiety, like I said, it will lead to depression, and then eventually you will start to have a lot of panic attacks. That's how panic attacks begin to increase. They happen all the time at random times for no reason, because you trained your body. So any little thing will turn on that switch. So that's why it's super, super duper important, you guys, that you really try to implement your coping skills and interventions. You practice, you begin, you write a plan for yourself, and you really think about what type of goals you want to reach. I mean, it starts with you guys. You know, you got to learn how to love yourself. And in order to love yourself, then you'll be able to do what you have to do and do the steps and put in the effort to feel better here. It starts here, your heart. But there's always those memes where the heart's like, yo, come on. In order, you gotta connect the two. And sometimes we're like, I don't know, we're all twisted and conjointed. You gotta check yourself whenever you feel like there's anxiety. Bring yourself down. One exercise that I will suggest for panic attacks is talk to yourself, take deep breaths, talk to someone on the phone to help you calm down, and then really just check your surroundings and make sure that you're safe. Because like I said, your body is just your brain is telling your body that you're in danger. So by you telling yourself, hey, I'm alive, there's no... And then, take your free breaths, put some water in you, sensory items, do what you gotta do. practice, practice, practice. Talk to yourself. Even if you look like a crazy lady, who gives a shit? Stop worrying about what other people think. But yeah, I think I've said enough. I will be putting out more videos. This is not the last, because like I said, there's just so many things that I can't even put in one video, and I don't want to ramble because I will lose you guys. Today was really, really tough with one of my consumers, and it was a huge learning experience for me, because it's something that I've dealt with my son, and I'm definitely going to utilize it with him, because I feel like sometimes I'm not as patient with my son the way I am with my clients, and it's not fair for him. And that's me being self-aware and learning and wanting to be better. And that's where you guys need to be. So hopefully you guys will get there, or hopefully you guys already are, and continue on with my own journey as we get our mental wealth. I almost lost my train of thought. Bye, you guys.